Hello and welcome to Growing Through It, your go-to podcast for real leadership stories. I'm your host, Jen Arnold. In every episode, you'll hear straight talk from leaders who face their own challenges. We'll dive into those whoops moments and the insights that followed. This podcast is about the lessons that refine us, shared to help you confidently lead in your own style. Whether you're looking to steer your team towards success or just seeking a spark of inspiration, you're in the right place. Let's grow through it together. Hey there, and welcome to the Growing Through It podcast. I'm your host, Jen Arnold, and excuse the congested, nasally voice. I got a cold from my son, and I'm still working my way through it, as is he. Luckily, I didn't get his fever and have just been kind of struggling along, making it through. Now, today is a solo episode, and I want to just do a quick recap of what last week's episode was. And I know this is a podcast, and you probably don't listen in any kind of order. But if you go through the catalog, if you will, I interviewed Michelangelo Aranda last week, and he told a story of being promoted into a director role, only to have the boss who promoted him completely turn on him. And after 6 months of pretty much increasingly toxic behavior, kind of started with passive aggression and then went to a little bit more toxic, Michelangelo left. And he did this when he was making the highest salary of his career, and he had no job to go to. And I love what he did, because I think too often we think we need to be victims of our organizations. And he decided to advocate for himself and prioritize a better work environment, even if it meant less pay. He is in a better place now. He's in a workplace and a work culture that really is, good to him. It's a great fit for him. And he went back to making a good amount of money. Well, however he defines good amount of money. He didn't tell me what he makes, but he's happy with what he makes. But some of the things that Michelangelo talked about brought back some memories from my leadership career. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. And I tell this story whenever I do leadership trainings, because I do think there are too many trainers and facilitators that come in on their high horse and talk about how leadership should be done. But the fact of the matter is it's really hard. And you have a lot of things being thrown at you. And obviously I created this podcast because things don't always go our way. And sometimes I feel like they never go our way. So I'm going to go ahead and preface this story with, this is really uncomfortable for me to share. And because it makes me feel, it kind of hits my ego a little bit. But I want to share this story because I teach vulnerability-based trust, and the only way for me to dig into other people's stories is probably to share my own. If you are a regular listener, I've alluded to it before, but I've never really told it. So here goes. It's going to be unfiltered and bumpy, and I'll do my best to edit it. But I'm going back in my mental catalog. And of course, with any story, this is only told from my perspective. I'm sure my boss has a different story to tell. My organization has a different story to tell. And I will be the first to say that I was a not so great leader. Like, I had to learn really trial by fire. So anyway, let me just get to it. All right. So my leadership career started, I was in my 30s. I'm trying to think of the timeline, early 30s. And I was always one of those really strong individual contributors. I could get stuff done. I could handle a lot of work. I was a go-getter, an achiever. I'm very type A. And so guess who gets promoted? Those people, right? So no one worried about would I make a good leader or not. It's just like, hey, this lady can get some stuff done. So I had someone come to me, I was in a different department, and they said, hey, we want you to take over this role and you be managing 2 people. I said, yes, let's do this. It was a different area of the company, and I wanted to explore, and I wanted to step into leadership. It sounded like a great opportunity. So I step into leadership, and I get like the easiest leadership gig of my life that I'll ever have. It was, 2 people, that's the only people I had reporting to me. They were great professionals. They were eager. They wanted to learn. They were, great with feedback. I mean, they were really like star employees, both of them. Granted, I made some trip ups with them too. Don't get me wrong. But it was really a great step into leadership. I didn't have a lot of support in that role. I could always, of course, go to my manager if I was having problems. I had peers that I could go to, but, kind of figured it out. And so as I was just bumbling along doing my job, we got a new VP, and I can't remember the time frame of when they came in, but the VP saw something in me, and I've been very fortunate over my career to have people see things in me that I don't see in myself. But they said, hey, we want to reorganize, because organizations love to do that. And we want Jen to lead this new function. And so what they wanted me to do, what they were pretty much doing, was taking an existing team and they were putting it under me. And I also, in combination with that, had to outsource a couple jobs within that team. Fun times. Now, when I look back at that situation, I would really probably think twice about taking on that role. Now, I had good relationships with these people. They were collaborators. I loved them. But honestly, they're a tight-knit team. They worked really well together. They were just running on all cylinders. I don't understand. They're almost like too tight. They're almost like cult-like. There was that. They were in the group. And we worked well as collaborators. But there was a shift when I was now their boss. So whenever anyone gets promoted, there's hurt feelings, right? So I'm sure my boss was like, what the hell? Why is she now my peer? And then this tight-knit group who was already with a fantastic leader, why do we have to go report to Jen? So no one was happy about the situation, but I just hummed along going, this is great. I've got this big promotion. It's exciting. And again, with the complexity of I had to outsource a couple jobs. And I went into it, unfortunately, with a kind of projects over people mindset. Hey, I was given a job. I'm going to get this job done, and didn't really care about the feelings very much. That was one of my biggest leadership lessons learned, is people matter. And as an individual contributor, a person who always got stuff done, an achiever, goal-oriented, we can tend to forget about people's feelings. It is one of the reasons why emotional intelligence is in our suite of offerings, because I lacked it so severely. And I know I'm not the only leader who does lack it. I've gotten way better over time, but I had to make all of these mistakes first. So there you go. So these people who I am now their boss, they know that their jobs are on the line. So I had someone go out on disability leave. I had, no one wanted to participate. And then we were asking them to, the people we were keeping, to be in on this project to make sure it went really well. Again, hindsight, you're like, oh, good Lord, this is a train wreck. So we went about the business. Luckily, my peer, stand-up person, they power through. They disagreed with it, made it known, but then went on and said, all right, we got to do this anyway. So luckily they were my partner and fully supported me through this and the whole project. So the whole time, I think it's going okay. I'm definitely leading a project, not people. And in the meantime, the VP who promoted me left and a new VP came in. And they didn't know me that well, but when I first started reporting to them, I remember thinking, oh, this is great. I do miss my old VP, but I think this is going to be a good change. The only feedback I remember was hey, great job. You're doing great. But then I guess it went about my way. Again, some of it's still foggy. But then there are some things that I do remember from the situation to where my new VP would never really make our one-on-ones. I would oftentimes go for our scheduled one-on-one. They wouldn't be there. They'd be out in the hallway talking to a peer, and never really got that one-on-one time. Never insisted on it. Let's just say the admin was not really helpful either. And I just said, oh, well, they don't want to meet, so I'm not going to push it. Go about on my way, continue on. In the meantime, I know that team's not happy. My prior two people are chugging along, but the team's just not gelling, right? It's like two separate teams. It's awkward. It's just not good. I remember really, really awkward meetings, and I wasn't doing a good job bringing the two teams together. So I remember one of the ladies who was kind of like the matriarch of the team, if that's even a proper thing to say, but, very well regarded in the company, very much liked to do things her way, very old school, but sometimes really in a good way, like the personal touch she wanted to give to some of the people she cared for. Like, I really admire some of that. But because I didn't build up this safe environment for people to come give me complaints, she didn't come complain to me, but she went to go complain to my boss, unbeknownst to me. So in the meantime, she was feeding my VP stories and whatever her reality. I'm not saying they weren't all true. There were some things definitely probably very accurate, but she ended up retiring on my watch, which isn't really helpful for me either. But it goes to show, like, I was definitely the kind of leader that people weren't ready to stay for. But in the meantime, I was getting no coaching. No one said anything like, Jen, hey, scale it back, like get your stuff together. Like, I had nothing like that. And I was going about it in all the ways that I had a just complete lack of awareness. And so it all comes to a head. I remember vaguely, I don't know how I ended up in my boss's office, so the new-ish VP. But I don't know if they called a meeting, if it was set up, I don't remember. But I go in their office, it's later in the day, and she just rails into me. And all I really remember from that point was she said, you can't treat people this way. There's no way to treat people. This is not working. That's really what I remember. I think I may have cried, and if I didn't cry, I cried shortly after I left. But it was like this big ball of feedback that I got all at once. It was all just negative, like, hey, you shouldn't be doing this, blah, blah. Like, and I was like, well, how am I supposed to know? No one has given me any feedback. I'm this completely unaware leader who is willing to learn and grow, but sometimes you need to like kind of tell me how it is. I need to understand. So I left that meeting, and pretty much in that meeting, she's like, this isn't working. You are not going to lead this team anymore. You're getting demoted. So all of that. And so I take my time. I cry. I'm upset. I had a really, really strong HR business partner who I was friends with, who would just really just a sounding board. I also had friends in the HRBP land who were just great mentors and peers. And I had a decision to make because I didn't want to get demoted. Who does? And it wasn't like, hey, we want to demote you and, we really think you have potential and we're going to, coach you. No, it was like, you suck, you're demoted, you're going back under your previous boss, and end of story. Yeah. I was really, really taken aback. Now, things happen in organizations where you talk to other people. So I had relationships across the company, and unbeknownst to my boss or anyone in my department, I had another VP who had been talking to me about coming to work for them. But it was a lateral move. No, I think it was a step down. It was a step down in band. And I was like, I don't really think I'm going to go take a step down to go do that. So the whole time I was like, I'm not doing it. And then all of a sudden, as I'm reflecting, as I am really in my emotions, because I was really pissed off. I was all the things. I was pissed off. I was humiliated. My ego had just taken a big, nosedive. shame, embarrassment, all the things. And after talking to the HRBP, after having some time to process my emotions, and one thing was clear, even in my emotions, out of emotions, I was not going to work there anymore. There was no way I would be successful. I did like my previous boss, and I think that could have been fine, but there was just something about it I couldn't sit in. So I came back, I think it was a few days later, and I said, look, I'm going to go take another job. I'm going to take a job with so-and-so. I don't care if it's a step down. It still wasn't a management role. And I'm going to go try again. And it was the most humbling time of my life. But I learned so much from that situation. I still made mistakes in my next leadership role, don't get me wrong, but I learned so much from that really terrible, terrible situation. And a lot of things transpired. I went to go lead a team of 15 after that. And it was just a different realm and a different culture. Automatically, the culture just fit me better. It was just a better place for me. And so it ended up being a good move, and I'm glad I did it. Now, there were some interesting things that came out. My newer boss was very transparent. There was no holds barred. I kind of knew what was going on. But when something happens like that in a department, you were then labeled. So one of the VPs in my last department told my new VP, hey, you don't want to hire her. She's not going to be any good for you. So my name was already getting thrown around I suck and I would never advance in the organization. So, I mention that because that's the problem in organizations. Sometimes something happens like that. A leader makes a mistake. I made a lot of mistakes, but I also was not supported. I wasn't coached. I wasn't given feedback, and I was put into truly an impossible situation. I'm not making, I don't know if it's really an excuse. I don't feel like I'm making excuses for myself, but set up to fail. I do feel that way. And it was such a hard time in my life, but I did have to really reflect on what was right for me in my career. I'm really glad I took that move. I could never get any higher in my career unless I went to a different department. So there were some drawbacks to taking that step down, but I learned about my leadership style, really where I struggle. And when there are goals involved and when there's a project, I need to really think about the people. You get the work done through the people. And there's some of the key or core principles of leadership that I just missed. I didn't know. And that's why I teach it today, right? So having some emotional intelligence so you can read the room and know when people are struggling, building trust, because if you don't have that, your people are going to go talk to your boss. Right. And then there's also this piece of politics, to be in front of my boss and say, no, I need feedback. Let me know what I'm doing right. What am I doing wrong? How can I get better? And I just missed the boat on that. Politics is important, and that's probably why I'm not in corporate America anymore. So I say all of this to say that we're all human. We all make mistakes. And we're also very resilient. There was no way in hell I was going to be demoted. Especially when I had other opportunities, when I knew I could do better, when I could be more successful somewhere else. And so learning from your mistakes, not letting them define you is really important. Yes, I could have stayed there and licked my wounds and said, oh, poor me. I said, no, I'm going to go take control of my career and make it what I want to be, and really be with a boss that I know that's going to support me and give me feedback, those type things. So that's my leadership story. I guess I didn't really complete it, but then I led that team of 15 for 3 years, and then I decided to leave. So, leadership is still hard for me. I have a tendency to get in my own world, and it's hard to get out of it sometimes. So when you make leadership mistakes, and I know you have, and if you haven't yet, you will, what can you learn from them? How can you ask for help instead of trying to go at it alone? How can you ask for feedback? And maybe what you need. Like, I really needed some coaching and I wasn't getting it. But ultimately deciding what's right for you. You don't have to let the organization decide what's right for you. You can do what I did. You can go to another department. You can do what Michelangelo did and leave, or you can stay and you can try to change minds, and you can be, kind of, how can you make up from your mistakes? That is a possibility too. So there you go. I'll be back on another solo episode where I'll talk about feedback, because I think that is the most important thing. I didn't get, Michelangelo didn't get, a lot of people don't get. Like, how do we ask for the feedback we need? How do we deliver it effectively? And how do we just get better and better as humans first, and then as leaders? So if you've listened this long, then thank you so much for listening, and I will see you next time.
Thank you for joining us on Growing Through It. I'm Jen Arnold, and it's been a pleasure sharing this time with you. If today's story sparked something in you, don't keep it to yourself. Subscribe to our podcast, leave a review, and share it with your fellow leaders. And remember, each episode comes with a nugget of wisdom that we expand on in our newsletter. So if you're eager to put these insights into action, head over to our website at growthsignals.co and sign up for exclusive content that'll give you an edge in your leadership journey. Keep growing, and I'll connect with you again soon in our next episode. Until then, take the lessons learned and lead authentically.